Don't worry, little Timmy, we have Halo at home. I think a game like Resistance 1 is required playing. You need to remember that all the memes about 7th gen were not trumped up falsities made off the back of a couple games. This was the brown and gray era. This was the time for shooters with awful gun feel. This was the time where a good checkpoint system could be seen neither hither nor yon. Resistance 1, it sucks so good. By and large, there isn't anything super offensive about a 7th gen shooter. Don't misconstrue that for them being enjoyable or fun, but oftentimes they are inoffensive. They lack the rough friction to make them unplayable or unbeatable. But my god, there are times where they just outright suck. The biggest issue with Resistance is that the guns feel so bad to shoot. There is nothing enjoyable from the feedback of blasting alien baddies with hot steel. In fact, when you get the shotgun, you are going to experience a level of disappointment you might not think possible when you start letting those barrels rip. It comes off as tinny and lacking a good range. You can't fire effectively from afar, and being close requires you to have sucked up so much damage just getting into that range. Really, effective range finding may be tied for the biggest issue. You engage in firefights from a distance where maybe 1 or 2 guns ever feel useful. Your standard human shoot-bang rifle is the only weapon that feels like it has an accurate enough spread and frequent enough ammo to use in most cases. The Bullseye, an ironically named firearm if I've ever heard of one, has such a massive spread that you'll need to use the secondary fire to put a homing pin on the opponent before you can unlock that gun's efficiency. All other weapons, be that the sniper, the auger, the hailstorm, what have you, all either lack useful range, feel crappy and inefficient, or are constantly wondering where their next ammo drop is. And it's a shame because these feel like the guns that justify this being a next-gen game. The hailstorm rapid fires bullets that will continuously bounce until they find something, but this never once felt useful. And the auger can shoot through walls, but the delay it incurs when hitting material makes it feel awful. Resistance feels like a game where you use the rifle because you want to, you use the bullseye because you have to, and you use the other weapons when it's your lucky day. Another problem that might be a bit more acute is that I was playing on medium difficulty and I am not sure Resistance is tailored for that. Everything hits harder than you would expect and everyone is kinda too spongy to take down without catching a bit in the teeth. This makes encounters feel awkward. You will see enemy Chimera take a knee after what your brain says is enough firepower, because it was half the fucking clip, and then get back up and keep blasting. Somewhere between the guns and the difficulty, everything lacks impact. This isn't overly difficult, and maybe even a bit more welcome of a challenge at times, but it feels artificial. And I do not like using that word, but it's the closest way to describe it. The flow of gunfights isn't right between the amount of bullets being expended and the amount of holes you need to put in the bogeys. Because enemies don't go down at a pace you expect, nor does anything really shake them, sans a point-blank double-barrel wake-up call, you get into this rut of gameplay where the path forward is trying to mitigate damage and realizing you kinda can't. There isn't much in the way of a cover system or the ability to stagger the Chimera, so firefights become an affair where the only way to engage is to take it on the chin in the process. There's points where this gets maddening to deal with, wondering how you can force an encounter or kite an enemy without taking any damage because everything hurts a little too much. Again, this feels like a problem with playing it on medium. All the stats were moved up to make it more difficult. Like, easy was the intended normal difficulty, and medium is the one that's artificially inflated. What starts out as inoffensive becomes infuriating the further you get in medium. Encounters become this awful trial and error affair. You need to know exactly who is where and when they are going to pop out because you can't afford to take an extra bullet to the chest. There are times where if you don't have a rocket, a grenade launcher, or one of the throwable explosives, the encounter borders on hopeless. You feel less like you are playing the game and more like you are attempting to cheat it. Like victory can only come at the most crafty and underhanded means. Anything less will get you punished by death and sent you back to your last, likely awful, checkpoint. And that's kinda it. You just Resistance 1 for hours until it's over. There is a rogue set piece or rare introduction of a new enemy type, but much like how the game feels stuck on your first 2 weapons, the game feels stuck on its first 2 enemies. You just keep shooting stock standard Chimera by volume. The new enemy types are rarely added to an encounter to meaningfully mix things up. If anything, it feels like little bespoke areas where you often see the composition switch up. Otherwise, it's more linear paths with the same dudes you were fighting 3 hours ago. You will see the spread shots of enemy bullseye coming at you in your sleep. It happens that frequently. But as I said, it's mostly inoffensive. There is absolutely nothing special about Resistance 1. The only aspects that you would ever feel the need to talk about are the negative ones. The story, the enemy variety, the weapon selection, boss fights or lack thereof, or the encounter design are about as milquetoast as one will find. I'm certain I am playing the least important part of this game. Like Resistance 1 must have made its bread off of couch co-op and online multiplayer. But there is something worthwhile to be found here in spite of that. I did occasionally wonder if I could use my time on something better. But Resistance 1 is a palate cleanser. Every once in a while, you gotta play something so bland and lifeless that it resets your taste buds. It was pretty breezy to scoot through the first half of the game, occasionally finding opposition in some rough encounters, but mainly just detoxing, flushing the system out, sitting on the couch for an evening and playing some old shoot bang. It's mostly fun to remember that games used to be this quality. We bought some particle board like this and just gnawed on it for a while. That good old post-Halo 7th Gen mediocrity. Again, I'm sure this game is entirely built off the back of its co-op and multiplayer content. The same just cannot be true when strolling through the campaign by yourself. But when you are done with Resistance Fall of Man, you will want to take on something new and different. Something exciting. Something with a bit of flavor when you bite in.